admissions criteria. So here's how it works these days. So we've got 6 bullet points here, all right? And the first 5 are probably the most important, okay? So the way that the admissions criteria works in the 21st century is the number one most important thing in the process are your grades. That's always been the case and still the case. These are schools, they're colleges, they're universities, right? The best predictors of success at the next level are your grades, all right? Number 2 is test scores, SATs, ACT, subject tests, APs, okay? Number 3 is going to be your extracurricular activities, leadership, charity, clubs, sports, work experience, so on and so forth. Number 4 is going to be your teacher recommendations. We talked about that a lot this morning. Number 5, essays, okay? Now, the interview I have up here because it is a component in the process, but it's becoming less and less important and frankly less and less popular. Popular insofar that not everyone gets an interview anymore. If you were an international student coming from India, you'd have an interview, no doubt, because there's probably an alumni in that region who can sit down with you, have coffee, talk to you. But for the domestic applicants, they just don't have the capacity for it. Okay, so interviews sometimes happen, sometimes they don't. Okay, but the way that I like to explain the process is that your grades are what gets you through the door. Right, it's like a dinner party. Right, your grades get you through the door. Your test scores get you a seat at the table. And it's everything else, your extracurriculars, recommendations, and essays. That is what convinces them to ask you to stay. So if our grades aren't there, we can't get into the room. If they are, but our scores aren't great, there's no seat for us at the table. If we make it that far, and those personal qualities don't pop, they're not going to ask us to stay. Okay? So grades, test scores, extracurriculars, recommendations, essays. Now, a few more things to say here. So the recommendations I have over here are called the X factor. I find that recommendations are easily the most overlooked aspect of the application from a student's perspective, right? Oh, I'll get Mr. Sanford just to write me my math recommendation. Okay. Well, in a town like Millburn, where you've got hundreds of people in a graduating class, right? Well, does Mr. Sanford have time for your application? Has anyone already asked him for a recommendation? He only has so much bandwidth, okay? Now, furthermore, you want to make sure that you choose teachers who are obviously going to say good things about you, right? But more importantly, they're saying good things about you because you've established a relationship with that teacher. Students don't put students don't put enough energy into forming a relationship with their teachers, okay? So, little story. And as a result, it can sort of sink a fantastic application. So, I had a student in New York, went to the collegiate school. He was a 6'6", left-handed, #1 tennis player. This kid was, he was the top player in the city. Awesome, right? He had an A-, B+ average, which is pretty good. More A- than B+, right? His SATs were 2,200. His subject tests were all over 7, okay? He had fantastic essays, all right? He applied to Georgetown, NYU, Michigan, GW, BU, Boston College, and another school or two maybe, okay? He got waitlisted at every single school. So you just reacted, right? It doesn't make sense, right? What happened? On paper, this kid was a perfect candidate. His recommendations killed him. He had a little bit of an air about him, a little bit of arrogance. Didn't exactly connect with his teachers all the time. He was a perfectly nice guy. If you didn't really know him very well, I'm not so sure about him. So in talking to his college counselor at the school, right? I learned through them because they spoke to the admissions people. Well, you know, his recommendations weren't as strong as we were expecting. Okay? So even though he did everything right, okay, because he didn't have that strong relationship with his teachers, all right, didn't value that relationship, those relationships. Yeah. He was waitlisted everywhere and then went to GW. He finally got off the wait list. He's very, very happy, but this is a kid who wanted to go to Georgetown. Okay? So when I say X factor, that's what I'm talking about. Okay? Sometimes it can swing an application that may otherwise be, sparkling. Okay. Now the interview, it can't get you in, but it can keep you out. Okay? I had a student in New York City who wanted to go to Middlebury, which is a great school. She had the scores, she had the grades. If there was anyone who was a perfect candidate for Middlebury, this was it. She goes for her interview. And it was an admissions interview with an admissions officer at the school. They ask her, so, tell us, about Poly Prep. Are you enjoying it? And what does she do? She proceeds to bash the school. Right? Needless to say, they were very surprised to hear her talk about her institution of education, in such unflattering light. Right? What happens? She applies to early decision. She gets deferred to regular. We're all shocked. Right? You're cringing. Into the regular pool, we write an appeal letter. Okay? Doesn't matter. They defer. They waitlist her. Kid never got into Middlebury, and she was pretty much a slam dunk. Had that interview just gone well, that's where she'd be graduating from. Okay, so again, the interview cannot get you in, but I've seen it keep you out.